So last week we started on this chapter 7 of the Learning Buddhism, the book Learning Buddhism that we were following, and it is a abstract, to say the least, chapter. It's called the Two Truths. So for many of us, it's the same first time that we might have heard about that, and so we're gonna kind of review a little bit, and we're going to go a little deeper at the same time and try and be able to help everybody to understand a little bit more about this. But it does require some contemplation on this. So, hearing this and just expecting it to automatically make sense to you may not work that way. You may have to think it through and then be able to just relax and just say, okay, I've gotten as far as I can go with it, but let me see how it works over time. So it is one of the more profound statements that we have in Buddhism. So I'm going to start I'm going to do short opening prayers to set our motivation. So if you have the books, please go to page 5 for the short refuge prayer and the 4 immeasurable qualities. We'll recite that. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chonamla, shangshu badu dagni kapsuchi, dagi jinsoki pe sonamgi, Drola penshir sange jupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesam centam she dewadang dewe godang dempar chig. Dugnal dang dunal gi gudang drawar chig. Dugnal me pe dewadang mi drawar chig. Ne ring jak dang ni dang dra wei tang namla ne pa chi. Okay. So if anybody has questions while we're talking, don't hesitate to just come on in and activate your microphone and raise your question or raise your hand or something so we can recognize you. And I don't mind being interrupted, and we will try and explain this two truths further. So just to review, human beings have always looking for, one truth that says everything. And many people will, look to the supreme being, that there is a supreme being, that everything comes from this creator, everything is from this supreme being and so on. And we just need to have faith in the supreme being and so on. And maybe that's true. We don't know for sure. But some people have had experience with a supreme being, and we're not here to challenge that or question that. But on the other hand, other people, look at things in a logical sense, and look at things in personal experience. And so we are investigating all that we see and so on, and trying to process what are we in relation to all of this, and what is all of this in relation to us, and so on. So what we have been able to recognize in Buddhism is the reality of what we would call the two truths. There's the phenomenal truth, or the relative truth. And this truth, the phenomenal relative truth, is the truth that we see, the truth that we hear, the truth that we experience with our five senses and our mind processing it and so on. And we see that there is everything is relative to something else. That we see that everything is compounded. Everything is there's many layers of what we call to be this phenomenal relative truth. So there's many examples of this. We might say, well, this table is real, and it'll last forever. It's permanent, But what we don't see is that at one time it was a tree, and before it was a tree, it was a seed. And before the seed could grow, it was the seed had to germinate, and there had to be nutrition in the soil, and there had to be heat from the sun, and there had to be moisture from the rain, and there had to be room for it to grow, and so on. So we don't see all those contributory causes that allowed the seed to grow into the tree. Then we also don't recognize that that tree was a home to many insects, and was a home to maybe animals as well. And that when that tree was taken down, it came from, there was great suffering as a result, suffering by those insects, suffering from those animals that lived in those trees, and fed on those trees. And the tree might have provided protection for other animals, other beings that were nearby, and so on. And so we see that there's much more to this tree. Then whoever cut that tree down, maybe that tree hurt them. Maybe it fell on them in a way that hurt them, or maybe they had to go through great pains to be able to know how to cut that tree down, and then they had to haul the tree back to the mill, and then they had to trim the tree, take all the bark off and all the leaves and everything, and then they had to, put it through the sawmill, and maybe there was an accident that might have happened to somebody, and there was great suffering as a result of that. And then once the tree, then the lumber then was cut down and had to dry, and then it had to be shaped into this table. And maybe it was given to an 8-year-old kid someplace in some country where child labor is still occurs, and the child had to put the table together and maybe then paint it with lead paint, and suffer the consequences of that. So we look at this table and think how wonderful this table is. It's going to last forever. But meanwhile, we don't see all the suffering that went into this, all the different changes that had to happen as a result to make this table. So we say that this table has a relative nature to it. It's relative to all these things that had to happen. This compounded nature had to happen to make this thing possible, and so on. So this is an example of many, many other things that we look at in our lives. So you can look at anything that you consider to be permanent and begin to examine it and think of the changes that it had to go through to get to be to the point that we thought it was permanent, and so on. The most significant for us is our own body. To regard our own body. When we're young, we think, we're going to live forever. We don't consider death, and we don't consider injury. We don't consider sickness, and so on. And as we get older and we see more things, we experience more things, we recognize that this reality of our getting older, of our getting sick, of our getting injured, of our ultimate dying and so on is imminent. It will happen. So, but we hold on. We want this body. We want this life. We want to be able to have these possessions. We want to be able to feel good about ourselves. We want to think that this is the highest thing that we can achieve in all of our phenomenal nature and all of this relative nature that we see all these things. And we don't want to give up the idea that maybe there's something beyond what it is to be a human being, So we hold on to this idea that we can know everything because we are the supreme being. We are like the gods. We are the most important of all the beings that we know. So we hold on to that idea. We see that we are relative. We see that our bodies are compounded with all these different things and everything. And then we get down, so as we examine that, we get down to the atomic level and we see that these atoms are the same atoms that are making up the tree, that are making up the table, that are making up other human beings, that are making up all the other insects and animals and so on, and all the other phenomenal nature is all made of the same parts, all made of the same thing. So we begin to see everything as all equal, but it's all in this phenomenal state. It's in this phenomenal state of mind that we examine this, that we see this, So as we do this and we see that all these changes are happening, so it's like, as we progress in our understanding, those things that we thought to be true now no longer are true. They're relative. And they fall away now with a new understanding, with a new knowledge. So we say, one man's floor is another man's ceiling. So we may get up to the ceiling and think, oh, that's where we want to be, to the ceiling. But then once we cross the ceiling, now it becomes the floor of now a new reality for ourselves and so on. So we see that there's this compounded nature of knowledge and wisdom and so on. So what we try and do is what we need to recognize is that this phenomenal nature is all what we call appearances. So these appearances are like the display of this phenomenal nature. So let's use an example of the sun. The sun, we know, shines and makes all this light and makes all this heat for us. And all this energy is coming from the sun and so on. But at the end of the day, when the earth rotates around, we no longer see the sun. We no longer feel its direct heat. We no longer see its direct light. But then the next day, the earth continues to rotate, and then we see the sun shine again, and we see we feel the heat again. So did the sun go away? What happened to the sun? We just didn't see the sun. The sun became, it became blocked. We didn't recognize the sun. We couldn't see it. The sun is producing this light, is producing this heat by its nature, its apparent nature. It's doing this. So we say that the display of the sun is its light and is its heat and its other radiation that might be invisible to us. But the point is that the sun is, by its nature, is producing these appearances. If we didn't have these appearances, we wouldn't be able to recognize. If we didn't have this light, we wouldn't be able to recognize things. We wouldn't be able to see things. If we didn't have this heat, we'd be frozen and we wouldn't have been able to be, to be born. The earth wouldn't exist, and so on. So we think that the sun is positive, or the sun is permanent. But what we don't understand, what we haven't been able to recognize until fairly recently in man's history, have we been able to understand that the sun is actually this dynamic fusion that is happening, where the sun is changing all the time, and this hydrogen is losing electrons, and as it does that, the hydrogen releases this energy, and the energy then becomes this light and this heat and this other radiation and so on. So we don't see that, we don't recognize that right away. So even the sun, which we think is permanent now, is relative, is phenomenal itself. And then it changes, and the hydrogen that is now losing those electrons, producing all that heat and light and so on, then that hydrogen becomes helium. And at some point, I'm not enough of a scientist to know, but at some point that helium then takes on other characteristics, and the sun begins to decay, the sun begins to die, and it goes through this other process, and it becomes some other kind of a celestial body and so on. So this is a story for the rest of the cosmos, that there are many suns, there are many stars that are going through these kinds of processes and so on. And we are witnessing this in whatever way we can, and these appearances seem so very real to us. And we'll say that they're permanent, that it's going to last forever. But when we look through the telescope and we look up at the nighttime sky and we're looking into the dark space and so on, we're looking at things that happened billions of years ago. And they may not be present now. They may be gone now, but we're still seeing the light of that. All of this is all phenomenal experience. We have these scientific studies that we've used to try and understand these things, and they are relative to our time and space, from our point of view, from our intellectual capability to be able to apprehend what the meaning of all this is. But we're looking at it as human beings. We're not looking at it as pure nature. Another way of saying that is that there may be another way of looking at things. We are looking at it from this point of view. If we were able to move around the cosmos to a place that is halfway between here and there and look at things, everything might look quite different to us. So we have to keep ourselves open to that and not allow ourselves to grasp onto things as being permanent like that this is relative. This is the relative truth. This is the phenomenal truth. In seeing this and recognizing this, we see that nothing lasts forever. Everything changes, and we begin to accept that. We begin to recognize that. So we begin to understand, or we begin to conjure up this idea that everything is empty of its own nature. Nothing is permanent. Nothing seems to be absolutely pure that we can see, hear, or feel, anything that we take in with our senses, that everything is relative. Nothing is so it's empty of its own true nature. When you can say, here is something that lasts forever, that doesn't go away, and it's always there. What is that? Can you describe that? Have you experienced that? And so on. So as a human being, we have our limitations, and we can't do that. However, we can go through a process of being able to um, rest, to be able to take our physical body that needs to have all this stuff to keep it moving and keep it fed and keep it alive and so on. And we need to get that to a point where we don't need to do anything for it for a space and time, that we can just let it relax. And then we need to have our intellect just focus on what we are doing, what that process is, until we get to the point that we just reach a stasis. We just reach a point of liberation, a point of freedom, that we don't have to be thinking about what it is that we're doing. And there's a process that goes in place to help us to do that. But what happens when we rest our physical body, when we rest our intellectual mind? What happens is we open up this spiritual body that we have, the spiritual body that is beyond our comprehension, that is beyond our intellect, that is beyond our be able to express what it is. It's like this, it's like that, it's not like this, it's not like that. You know, we can express it in the terms that we're familiar with, that the only thing that we can is in relative terms. But yet, when we experience this transcendent spirituality, then we are now connected with the ultimate truth or the absolute truth. And it takes the, and so what is recognized now is this compounded nature of the relative. So the relative is like the appearance of the ultimate, just like the light and the heat is the display, is the appearance of the sun. But the sun is going through all this stuff. This ultimate truth, this absolute truth, is beyond our comprehension, but we experience it. So this is what, so many great beings that we have so much respect for, be it, masters in one tradition or another. Maybe, in history, we see that there are such great masters, the Christ is one example, Moses is another example, so many different, beings that we know and so on. The Buddha is an example. There's so many different examples of these beings that were transcendent, who were talking about things that others needed to be kind of uplifted to be able to be inspired to be able to have those experiences themselves. And they came as a means to be able to show the reality of this, to be able to show how to get there, to show that there is something beyond what we are. So this spirituality and these masters is all within us. We have all this within us. And it's a matter of being able to concentrate that energy. It's the ability to be able to concentrate our focus and be able to relax all the preconceived ideas, all the concepts that we have in our phenomenal nature, to relax that, to allow ourselves to be able to have that transcendent, beyond our human comprehension experience. So the two truths is explaining is the display of that awareness. So the emptiness is the recognition that all things are empty of their own nature. All phenomenal things are empty of their own nature. And By letting that go, by letting that go, we then begin the process of being able to experience the absolute nature, the true nature. So, who has questions? Nobody? Great.
I have a question. So does somebody else. Who was that?
All right. Michael, you go, and then whoever else was coming in can ask their question.
So both of these realities exist in a space that influences us in the relative world. Is that correct?
Yes, they exist temporarily in our minds.
Mm.
Yeah, this is Grant. I mean, I did not really totally follow that. Maybe if you gave some examples in terms of like my own body, okay, I can get the relative truth, but the absolute truth, I mean, you one time you talked about just like macro, micro, looking at your body as, kind of made up of atoms and things like that. But then going from there to the emptiness was not totally clear to me.
Okay. The emptiness means that it's empty of its own true nature. Take for instance, there's like say gold. Gold is an element that we find here in nature, and it has, it's got an atomic structure, and but so it's a pure gold is just those pure atomic or those pure atoms coming together, and the more you put together, the heavier, the more substance you get of the gold. Okay, so you can say that the element of gold, that's pure gold. But if we go deeper with the atoms of gold, we see that it's made up of nuclei and electrons and protons and muons and nuons and so on, and a whole lot of space. There's more space in the atom than there are these particles, these subatomic particles. So although we may say, here is an atom of gold, this is the essence of gold, but yet that essence of gold then can be divided down now into protons, electrons, neutrons, muons, and so on, and energy.
But that seems almost like a materialistic type of viewpoint. I mean, you could say that of all matter.
Well, that's exactly right.
So it's, totally takes any type of spiritual component out of it and turns it into just, the materialistic nature of all matter.
So what is the energy then?
The energy in terms of
the matter.
I mean, I assume it's just a physics material type of property. I mean,
but isn't that what Einstein was able to, put together? E equals mc squared.
Right.
That energy, if you can move matter at twice the speed of light, energy will be released. So what that's saying is that energy and matter are relative to each other. There is a relative sense to them. If you can slow energy down to a point, all of a sudden it becomes matter. All of a sudden it coalesces, and that energy now comes to be matter. So, the scientists today are they talk about they've got all these kind of, great devices that they're building over in Europe and so on, where these, I don't remember what they're called, but they're trying to find what they call the God particle. That there's something now that is the basis of all this. They're looking for something that is basic to all of this. And sometimes they say it is a particle, and sometimes it is a wave. But they haven't been able to produce that. They haven't been able to find that. So in spirituality, through the meditation, we begin to recognize that through our experience. Now, I know that sounds self-serving. Oh, I've experienced this and you haven't, so you can't know it until you experience it like I experienced it or something. And I'm not trying to say it that way. It's not meant to be like that. But there is something you see that all this is something that's beyond our human comprehension. And all this is at the basis of being free. The very first thing in the Eightfold Path is the right view of freedom. And that freedom includes everything that we know, to let go of everything that we know. Because if we hold on to that, then we're just holding on to the suffering, all the causes of suffering, all the layers of suffering, and so on. So we have to allow ourselves to be free, to be able to experience the spiritual. Rebecca, did you have something?
No, my eye itched. I'm fine.
Oh, okay. All right. Because your little microphone wasn't on. Okay. Did somebody else have a comment or a question?
Hey, Lance. I might have a question. I'm not exactly sure how to word it, but in terms of practicality, when it comes to doing your practice, which one of the truths comes first in realizing it? Because to me, it sounds like there's the relative truth, which leads to the discovery of the ultimate truth, the transcendental truth. But what do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Emptiness is an expression that we use. The relative and the ultimate truths can't be separated. They are spontaneously present. They both happen simultaneously. They are indivisible from one another. And from this, there is this display that we see, but we don't recognize the ultimate at the same time until we can slow ourselves down enough to be able to apprehend that, to be able to see that. And that's what we call being transcendent. When we stop processing everything that we see, hear, and think, oh, I got to know what this is, I got to know what this is, instead of experiencing as it is, such as it is, which is beyond our comprehension. So we say that all this stuff that's holding us back, you see, is born in this emptiness. So it becomes a way of being able to let ourselves release it, that it's empty of its own true nature. It has to be experienced. If we're trying to comprehend it, then we're defeating our purpose. We're not liberating, we're attaching. So you can ask yourself, it's a valid question, say, well, why am I doing this? Why bother? And that's a question, I think, for everybody to answer for themselves, you know? So we talk about suffering, we talk about samsara and nirvana and so on like that, you know? So, you know, how important is the suffering to you? Are you satisfied with the 3 dimensions in which we live? That we experience things? You know, is there something else that we are a part of that we are ignorant about? We don't know what it is that we don't know.
Lance, when you say 3 dimensions, what do you mean? And then is spiritual part of that? And is that like a 4th or 5th dimension?
Well, the dimensions are, you know, the way in which we can visualize that we can experience things. You know, things have a breadth to them. Things have a depth to them. Things have a length to them. You know, we see things in 3 dimensions. We talk about the 3 worlds all the time. We talk about that which is below the earth. We talk about the earth and that which is above the earth. There's many different ways in looking at these 3 dimensions and so on. But it all comes back to, you know, this is our limitation. This is what we see. Can we go into our perceptions? Can we turn on our perceptions and begin to experience things in ways that are beyond our normal capability of being able to measure something in width, depth, and length?
Is that an additional dimension, or it's captured within the framework you've described as part of the 3 dimensions, but things that we can't easily, like I can see this bowl, right? And I can measure it, touch it, but there's some other element or aspect around me that I may not be able to easily measure because of the way, just my learning history and how have been essentially conditioned myself. Is that
as human beings, maybe our brain is just incapable of being able to see other dimensions. You know, maybe a 4th dimension, a 5th dimension, a 6th dimension. Maybe there's 16 dimensions.
And what would like that be referencing? So it's like when you're like lower earth, above, and then what would be the 4th or 5th dimension? And I apologize for my absolute ignorance. I don't know if anyone else is thinking what I'm thinking or doesn't want to ask. Lance, you're so patient with my questions. Thank you.
No, it's okay. You know, and it is a spiritual quest to find those dimensions, to explore those dimensions. It is part of being a yogi. You know, the other night we watched the film, you know, the Yogis of Tibet. These are people who spend, you know, a great deal of time developing their ability to be able to rest their physical body, rest their intellectual mind, and then they're opening up that what we call the spiritual mind or the true mind, the true nature, into that ultimate truth, that absolute truth, and navigate around through there. And if you were paying attention in the film, because we heard from 3 different yogis during the film who all said, I can't even tell you. You wouldn't even believe me if I tried to tell you. You know, so it's a question of whether we want to do that for ourselves. You know, do we have a motivation to want to do that, or are we happy with what we have? So,
and Lance, when you because I want to make sure I'm learning these connections. When you say happy with what we have, and forgive me if I'm describing this incorrectly, attachment to the earth, my earthly world, right? Like,
Right.
right, like my ego, pride, like I just, like I want money, fame, like these sorts of things. That's what you're describing, right? Like I want to
Correct.
think about my Disney World vacation and the dinner I'm having at the
Correct.
expense of, okay.
Correct.
Okay, so it's the intrinsic motivation within each human to say, like, I want to go beyond these earthly attachments and think or travel or journey or whatever, go forward in this other effort.
Right. So the scientists are trying to do it physically. The spiritualists are doing it by sitting in one place for however long they need to.
Thank you.
So it's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing that we have we've got so much advancements, and like we were talking about, like especially in the Western world, to evaluate and observe phenomenon that was not previously easy to understand and conceptualize, where we're trying to explore with our modern day technology these concepts and apply science. To me, it is, at least that's the way my brain is processing this information at this moment, Lance.
Yeah. We're already Buddha. What we need to do is to be able to rest in that and not to complicate it. Everything else will take care of itself. You know, we're trying to make things happen for what seems to be our own benefit all the time, the benefit of others, or we're trying to do things against people. We're doing things out of the motivation of the five poisons. You know, the delusions that we have that we can know things, the hatred that we have, the aversions that we have, the attachments, the desires that we have, the jealousies that we have, the pridefulness, the greediness that we have. You know, these are the motivations that we're using to rationalize all these activities, all this karma that we create for ourselves.
And you mean, just for clarification, good, bad, or neutral karma when you said that, when you make that sentence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, what does this connote to you? I mean, all this, what do you think the final the final result of this is? What do you think we're trying to accomplish?
Nirvana?
And what is that?
So I guess, again, my newcomer brain and the sentences and the words I'm going to use are not going to be probably precise, but letting go of attachment to stuff, basically. That's probably not, I'm not saying it like the best way I know, but I no longer seek the attachment to things that are causing my suffering.
Okay, so if you don't want to suffer, then what do you want to be? What do you want to do?
I want to be at peace. Fill in the blank.
Okay. Peace. Okay.
Give me a multiple choice.
All right. So what are you willing to give up for peace?
Well, I mean, like if my body is no longer alive, I'm hoping I'll be at peace, right? So am I willing up to give my human life to be in a place of peace, like my soul or my spirit or whatever transcends? I mean, I don't know how I could live like I would love to live a very bare bones existence. I don't know. I don't know how to do that. Like, it seems incredibly complicated, like just to give up everything. I don't know. Like, I would love for you to tell me the pathway to let go of stuff. I mean, I live very well below my means, like from a financial perspective, but in breaking that down further, like looking at my daily life as a sets of behaviors, Lance, like letting go of attachment to how I eat, the things I drink, like, right, like things like having to have things be rituals or routines that are like, if I don't have that, that ruins my day. Like those are the things I think of immediately. Like I don't need to drink Starbucks, like coffee. That's the point, like that's a ritual I do. And does that ruin my day if I don't have my flavor? Like those are silly little examples, but those are things I'm thinking of in my day-to-day life that just let go of. I don't know if I'm answering the question the right way. Or there's probably not a right way to answer this question.
What about I don't know?
Gary, get involved, Gary.
What about I don't know? You see that what you just did is a perfect example of trying to let me think of as many things as I can think of to validate my existence instead of saying I don't know. You know, it's a good question.
It is a
I
good
don't know. But you know, so once we recognize that, then it becomes now, do we want to be a Buddha? What does it mean to be a Buddha? What does it mean to be, you know, in terms of in Hindu, they talk about the avatar. You know, now they talk about the avatar with these games and stuff like that, which, you know, it's kind of like your representative, I think. But in the old days when I was learning about, you know, things like this, you know, the avatar was like the great hero, you know, was like the Krishna was an avatar. Jesus was an avatar, you know, and the avatar was a, 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 um, a being or an entity or something like that that could catapult you into another reality, into another consciousness level, something like that. So my point in bringing this up is do we want to be an avatar? Do we want to be something other than who we are? Are we satisfied with who we are? And we're just looking for a better way to exist as we are now. So then the question becomes, well, how do I do either of those? So if we want to become better than we are and be of benefit to other beings, then we want to be able to be on some kind of a path where everything that we do helps other beings and so on. And that we're not doing things selfishly, because as we're selfishly, we're grasping and so on. So we take on this life of being a helper, helping other beings to not suffer. And by doing that, I'm fine-tuning my freedom from not suffering. You know, I'm working at it with other people, and it's helping me to tweak my ability to be able to do that because I'm still processing how that is all done. But when I get really perfect with that, now all of a sudden, I don't need this body anymore. I don't need this life anymore. I become the essence of what all this is. I become the ultimate truth.
So Lance, this is Grant again.
Okay.
Something that I'm more familiar with is like the concept of like non-duality and like no self and no ego, and that, you know, consciousness is sort of the basis of reality, which it seems very tied in and similar to the two truths, but it also seems not exactly the same. I don't know, any comments on that?
Well, they're all descriptors of the relative because they're all conceptual, you know, and we can't conceptualize the absolute because the absolute is non-conceptual to human beings. However, we can experience it. And when we experience it, we bring it back into our human intellect, and we try and process it in some way. And one of the things that comes out of that is love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Bodhicitta. The four vast immeasurable qualities of the enlightened mind. What is that enlightened mind? Now I've had this experience now spontaneously, because spontaneously, remember, this is the ultimate and the relative are happening both at the same time. They're simultaneous. And now if you can bring something back from that ultimate and know it to be indestructible within yourself, now it affects the relative. The relative becomes closer to that. It's fusing together. It's never been separated, but we're recognizing it. So that's the bodhicitta. That's the holy enlightened mind. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So but the point is that we experience that through non-conceptuality, to allowing ourselves to let everything go, our dualistic mind, to let our dualistic mind go. And the other phrases that you used, you'd have to repeat them for me again, but all those were descriptors of the phenomenal mind.
Lance, I think as I was listening to Zara talk, I think the problem I can't speak for everyone, but I believe that the problem for most of us who have lived long lives is that we've been raised from the beginning to believe that the only thing that is real is phenomena. That's the way we've been raised. And according to the two truths, the ultimate truth, there is no reality to phenomena. But since we were in the crib, especially in this society, but I believe in most, we were raised to believe that phenomena is the only thing that is real, and that your life is to be spent on an agenda, achieving things that are phenomenal in nature, achievements. You've got to get things, you've got to reach a certain grade, you've got to get a certain degree, you've got to do everything that we've been told that we need to achieve in order to have been deemed successful by the end of our life is phenomenal in nature. We have to go through successfully pass through various phenomenal gateways. And at the end of that, if we've done that, then they can put on our tombstone that we've been successful, that we have, but we are not enlightened. And what we're learning now, as I understand it, is that that's the wrong path. The wrong path. And that's what I'm hearing now. And I think that's at the heart, part of the confusion that Zara has, and certainly that I have been working through. Is I've had to unravel a lot of things that I've learned.
Well, let's look at it from this point of view. It is the path of delusion. But that delusion is what makes it possible for us to be able to abide in the ultimate. It's a gift. We've given ourselves this life as a gift. We have this precious human life. You remember the teaching that we went through when we talked about the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, that there is a way to be able to experience this as a transcendent being, that we have this Buddha nature within ourselves.
Attending a class,
So we have this
Buddhist
true nature.
101 class.
Grant, you have your microphone on. Will you turn it down, please?
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. So we have this gift that we've given ourselves because of our good actions in the past and so on. So we shouldn't look at this life as such a negative thing, as a purely negative thing. We should look at it as a gift, be grateful for it, and seize all the opportunity we can to make it be transformative for us and for others. So I think that's an important element into developing a healthy attitude towards all of this. And recognize that it takes lifetimes to do this. We're so, like you just said, we are so absorbed with this lifetime. We think this is the only lifetime. And that we're so absorbed with this body that the only way we can experience any lifetime is in this body. But there is the transpersonal. The transpersonal means that we're all the same, that we've all lived in 1850. We're all living now, and we're all going to live in 2050 from the point of view of spirit. It's indestructible. It's immortal. So what we're coming to recognize is that we are part of that continuum. That's the Tantra. Tantra in Sanskrit means continuum. And there is this continuum that we are part of. So all this is intellect. We're using the intellect now to try and understand something that is non-conceptual. And that's the rub. That's what everybody's trying to understand. Well, how can I understand help me understand the non-conceptual? It's impossible. But it can be experienced. And that's the invitation. That's the thing, to experience this. This is what the yogis were talking about. This is what Jesus was talking about. This is what Moses was talking about. This was all these great, avatars were talking about. Experience this. Imagine now more and more spiritual beings. And maybe it's been happening. We don't see it because we're so involved with ourselves. But just think about what humankind has gone through and where we are today. I mean, now we're arguing about voting rights. We're arguing about, what nationality, what culture you came from, and are you an American and stuff like that, But 100 years ago, we couldn't have those kinds of conversations in the same way that we are now. They were still in the closets. They were still being, had obscenities associated with them and everything. We have progressed. Human beings have progressed. There is movement. And there's more and more people like that. So not that this world is ever going to change, because this world is part of the phenomenal nature. It's this continuum. If it's not happening on Earth, it's happening on the planet Seremus, wherever that is. So we shouldn't be holding on to those things. We should be trying to bring the wisdom of the Spirit within ourselves out. That's where the salvation is. That's the love. That's the bodhicitta. And then we free ourselves. We free ourselves from the bonds of hatred. We free ourselves from the bonds of delusion. We free ourselves from the bonds of desire and jealousy and pridefulness and greediness and so on. We become much happier beings. Even if we just remain as a human being, we can become an enlightened human being.
I'm really on the ropes. This is tough. This whole relative thing.
The whole what?
The relative, the whole
relative.
relativity thing. I've spent my life, operating off of to-do lists and thinking, well, and then at the end of the day thinking, well, this was a pretty good day because I got most of the things on my to-do list done. Or that this was a lost day because I didn't get many of them done. And I realize all of us, now and now I'm thinking, maybe I've got it completely backwards. Maybe I ought to say, well, this was a good day because I avoided relative accomplishment or achievement. And I was only forced into really doing something relative once or twice, and the rest of the other 22 hours I don't know.
Well, let me ask you a question.
I'm beginning to think I've had it upside down.
Well, let me ask you a question. And why did you want to investigate Buddhist philosophy?
Well, Michael came over to my house and he said, he's been doing this for years. And he said that now he was going to a different level and he was making more of a commitment to it. Then he started talking to me about how all the things I thought were real were not real. And basically scared the hell out of me. I think I told him to go home. It was just, it just seemed intriguing. I've known Michael for years, and he's always had this kind of depth that I couldn't penetrate. And I decided, I wanted to know a little more about that. I didn't know what I was getting into. I'm still not sure. But I'm more and more conscious of having my life tied up with all kinds of relativity. And not only that, but measuring the success of my life by relative achievements, and at some point thinking this really is not what it's about, but nonetheless doing more and more of it. I don't know. I'm getting us, and I'm in a trench here. So,
well, that's healthy because you're recognizing that.
no.
So the reason why I asked you the question, because I wondered what your motivation was and what you thought you were going to find when you investigated this. Was it going to be something that was going to be revolutionary? And were you ready for that? Were you prepared to change your mind?
I had no idea what I was going to find, and I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I'm working on it.
All right. So the question is, does anybody want to change their mind?
Right.
Have we been living in a delusion? Is there a delusion? However you want to express it, that we live in this artificial dream that we've created for ourselves, and many of us collectively share the same dream.
Right.
A national dream or a religious dream or a family dream. There's all these different kind of interlocking, dreams that we share and so on, but they're all just delusions, aren't they? We're all just actors in a play. Have you ever had the experience of, meeting somebody and you say, I know this person, there's something very familiar about this situation, this seems so real to me, but in a whole different way, they would call it like deja vu, and, so it's part of that transpersonal I'm talking about. you know, that we've all had these experiences all over our lifetimes and so on. And when the conditions are right, all of a sudden things start clicking and things start opening up. To it. So my point,
Yeah. You get a glimpse.
you get a glimpse,
And then it
goes.
yeah.
You know. But so the point is, are we? What is the human ideal? What is the best that we can be? How do we measure that? And is there are there levels that we maybe have not considered yet?
Yeah. Well, apparently they are.
So, you know, it's not anything that is going to be harmful that we're talking about. You know, it may be difficult. There's no question about that. It's going to require work to develop this, and it's not likely to happen in this lifetime. But when we begin to see that the lifetime is nothing more than changing bodies, and like we go to the closet in the morning, we take a shower, and we put on a new suit of clothes and go about our day, that's like what a lifetime is. You know, from as a simile, you know, it's like that. And you know, is that an exciting proposition, or is that a frightening proposition?
Both.
Both?
Well, it's frightening because it necessitates a paradigm change.
Of course. That's
That-
exactly what it is.
And I see Zara up there looking compassionate, so I'm encouraged.
I appreciate you asking these questions and sharing how you're thinking about this, because I think it's beneficial for other people too who are listening. So thank you.
So all this is a different point of view.
Yeah.
You know, it's being able to see things now in a different point of view. We've been seeing things in this point of view, looking at the earth, looking at our lives, looking at the stars from this point of view. But what if we can move it and we look at it from another point of view? What does it, you know, what's the result of that?
Well, I think that's what I'm learning. I mean, I think it's an orientation. It's a way to look at things. It's a way to frame things, not a way to identify some heretofore undiscovered truth.
So how do we measure that? How do we evaluate that? How do we trust in that?
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, part of it is in the books that we read and the teachings that we receive. Part of it is the people that we meet. You know, these people, you know, who are investigating this and maybe experiencing it at different levels and everything. Are they good people?
Well,
Do they seem to have something that I would like? Or are they people that are completely opposite to what I want?
Yeah.
For any given set of reasons.
well, thanks for your patience, you and everybody else.
Well, thank you for yours, you know, because it requires your patience to be able to come in and investigate this and allow yourself to be exposed to, you know, these different ideas, these different concepts and so on.
Oh. As Rebecca said last week, I mean, we got to stop asking questions if we want you to be able to go on. So,
Well, that's okay. No, this is so. So, like I said in the very beginning of this this session tonight, I said, you know, this is stuff that we come back to. This chapter is a very powerful chapter because it is so transformative in its nature. You know, it really gives us a different way of looking at things that we haven't considered. And as you pointed out, people have based our entire lifetimes on just the phenomenal relative, and they don't accept the spiritual.
Right.
You know, and what are they doing? You know, we would say that they're limiting themselves. No matter how much money they put into it, no matter how many rockets they send up into space to go figure it out, you know, they haven't even, you know, knocked on the door yet.
We're keeping score on the wrong card.
Indeed. That's a good way of looking at it. So the idea of the two truths, the idea of emptiness, the idea of permanence, of temporariness, and so on. All this is all factors that are all part of this equation that we're trying to balance out. And it takes time. There's a system in place to help us to do that, and that's the Dharma system. That's the Buddhist system that we're following. So here we've opened up a door now that is now we're going to start bringing more pieces together. Remember, I said it's like a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle without a picture. So we got to make the frame. We got the corner pieces. Now we got to start examining all the interior pieces and so on to make it all come together. Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment for Ed. I would say to Ed, and I can say to Ed because I'm looking at his little tiny picture there, that he should not worry. We're all explorers, and at the same time, we will realize occasionally that we're on the same path. So we're in good company, and there's lots to discover, and there's no real hurry.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody's on schedule. Your own schedule. We all have our own schedules. And we're thankful for each other. It's important to have that, to be thankful for each other. You know, we're helping each other. The four vast qualities, the four immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. I mean, this should be, if you're going to get a tattoo, this would be a good tattoo, to get that. Bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. These are the four immeasurable qualities of the wholly enlightened mind. So we have this potential within us. So we need to understand loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, and make that our motivation every day, every moment of every day.
Thank you, Lance.
Oh, you're welcome, Adrian.
Wanted to say one little thing. I don't know if you guys were able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh. Been having some issues with the connection. No, just back to what Gary was saying, that everything we know is pretty much has been indoctrinated since we were infants, that the phenomenal nature is the only thing that exists. But again, what I believe in is that we wouldn't be here trying to learn Dharma if we didn't feel that with our hearts. And I have a very acute sense of, what we're talking about here. But a lot of times I just cannot express it and use my words, but I know in my heart what it is. And again, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us looking for it and coming here to hear about it. And the other people that taught us about the phenomenal nature is just like folks like us, a lot of times ignorant of the ultimate nature. And that's why they were not able to teach us about that kind of stuff. but our wisdom, internal wisdom, is what's keeping us on the path in a lot of ways that we most of the time are not aware of. But here we go. We are just like keep putting a foot in front of the other, trying to locate and find peace in that heart.
I'm really glad you said that, because that's the experience I had too. You know, I had this experience in my heart. I know it's there, and I'm looking for a way to be able to think about that and to communicate that with my brothers and sisters. And in the Dharma, in these teachings, I found a way to be able to do that. You know, and I would think that we all are good people. We all are Buddha, you know, and we all want to express that love that we have, that compassion that we have, that joy that we have, and that equanimity that we have. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Like you just said, we wouldn't be here. And we're trying to find the right vehicle in which we can express that. And this is what this system is about, is being able to give us a way to be able to do that. So the vocabulary that we use, you know, the practices that we practice, the books that we read, the teachings that we receive, and so on, is all part of that. So yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So anybody else? Soho, how about you? What do you think of this?
Sorry, I'm mute. It's good. It's just a bit complicated for me. I try to understand.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad that you're here, and you did come in the kind of the middle of things, but we're going to go back and we're going to refresh some of the basic things before we get too far along, and make sure that, you know, we're bringing everybody kind of, you know, back up to speed, back up to, you know, what the fundamentals are. You know, here we've gotten a little bit out there, but we're going to go back to
Yeah.
some fundamentals and get that.
Okay. Good.
Yes. Grant, how about you? How are you feeling right now?
I'm fine.
Okay. Sean, how about you? Did you have anything that you wanted to add to the conversation, or any comments or questions?
That's my colleague Lance, named Shannon. She's my good
Sorry.
friend. I realized you said Sean, but that her name is Shannon.
Oh, Shannon.
That's
Okay.
okay. That's okay.
Sean.
I answer to anything. No, thank you. I'm just trying to take it all in and catch up. I don't have anything to add or ask specifically now, but I appreciate being involved so much. Thank you.
What was, I mean, I understand that Zara was, you know, a person who asked you to come in, but did you
Yes.
have an interest in understanding more about the philosophy, you know, or did she just kind of hook you into it?
No, absolutely. I did have an interest, and I've started actually exploring this interest before, but it's just over the past year with the whole, you know, with everything that's been going on and a whole bunch of life changes and spiritual changes and personal changes and things like that. It's just something that I wanted to reinvestigate at this point. And it was just really good timing for me, because it's been a really challenging year. And Sarah just kind of picked up on that and said, this is the right place and the right time for me to get involved. So I'm really grateful that she did that.
Oh, well, really great. Well, like I said, we're going to kind of go back to some basics and
That's
kind of
great.
shore them up a little bit. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to do that.
Thank you so much, Lance. I appreciate being involved.
You're welcome. I hope you stay with us.
Lance, this is
Absolutely.
a true story, just how like the circle works. So Shannon, Adrian, and I all do the same type of work. We're all behavior analysts. And so Adrian is the one who got me pulled in and connected. And then I've encouraged Shannon, hey, come and listen. So I think it's kind of neat how the interconnectedness of even within this group. I think it's pretty cool. because we're all like highly trained, like analytical with, and like the environment, like the things you're talking about with the relative versus absolute is really easy for us to sort of understand that framework because of how we're trained as professionals to look at these physical things. That really, for all of us, the concepts are pretty solid, but I think it's really neat to have this opportunity to, for all three of us to have to think beyond that and overlay it into a totally different dimension in our own lives.
Well, great. Thank you very much for that. Rebecca, Curtis, do you have anything that you want to add? Okay. Tom?
I've been playing with an idea over here.
Okay.
And that is that I can't remember if it was you who raised it, Lance, or if I picked it up somewhere else, but it was the concept that time only exists because of change. That when you get into the physics of why time exists, why doesn't time go backward? As physicists play with that concept, time moves in one direction because it's a stacking of changes. And if the purpose of meditation is to sit and do nothing, it's almost like it could cause the universe to solidify if everybody did it at once. You know what I mean? To stop change. So I think I spun off in the exact opposite direction from Zara. We're like, you and I are like equal and opposite actions or something here. Anyway, I've been playing this whole time with the idea of time and change and emptiness.
Well, it's good investigation. Time is another concept.
Right.
And as a concept, it's a fabrication. It's something that we do, that we can do because of our our intellectual ability to be able to conjure up all these ideas and so on. Is it true? Is it reality? You know,
Yeah, maybe not.
who knows from what point of view? You know, it's a relative concept. You know, so when we are the true nature, we are the continuum. Our body, speech, and mind. When we do Om, Ah, Hong, may my body, speech, and mind become the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones, it means may we become that continuum. May we become that light. May we become that energy. May we become all of that phenomenal nature, all of that wisdom, ultimate nature, spontaneously, and not having to have aversions to it or attachment to it. We are it. It's just really that simple. You know, it really gets down to being that simple. But if we start out saying, okay, just be here now and go home, everybody's going to say, well, what do you mean? But really, that's what it is. Just be here now. Be happy. Do good deeds. Be a benefit to all beings. Don't do any harm.
Right. And what I'm finding for myself is that the more I think of the lives that we live, the people that we are, as sort of a beautiful temporary energy structure that arises out of the universe, the easier it is for me to let go of needing things a particular way or needing a particular outcome. It's just kind of like, oh, isn't that pretty? That'll be nice. And, you know, and then it'll be gone, and that's okay.
Well, imagine it like this, that this is a proving ground. And when you finally give up on the idea of trying to make suffering work, and you're really ready to let it go, then you can graduate to the next place. So whether they call it another dimension, whether they call it heaven, whether, whatever name people might attach to it, whatever concept people might attach to it, but maybe there's some reality there. And what we can see is how it changes us now. We can watch television, we can see the news, we can hear things, and we become a little less affected if we have this true nature. Oh, I'm so sorry these people are going through this. Oh, it's so terrible. I wish there was something I could do or say, but it seems like there's not a whole lot I can do. They got to go through their changes, just like I got to go through my changes. I'm not going to do anything to exacerbate their suffering, but I'm going to try and add to the happiness, to the joy of the experience of being a human being.
Lance, that's a really good, natural, practical thing you just said. When we see people who are going through their own journey of, we'll call it suffering, and it seems like wow, that seems like a lot. Like your car accident was totaled, you have a really bad case of COVID, you just lost your father just passed away, and our natural inclination may be to get involved, and it becomes like this emotional event for us too, right? Because we're investing so much into, and what you're suggesting is that we can, I guess I'm trying to overlay what you just said in a practical application of watching other people suffer, where you just want to, let me help you, let me stop your suffering. But really, that's not my purpose, is to stop someone else's suffering. That may be their journey, correct? And you're suggesting I can do other things in my actions that may be helpful, but don't need to be me removing or taking away or verbally saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I guess I don't know. I'm trying to come up with ideas of what else that would look like, but while I'm trying to be compassionate and loving and wanting them to not suffer without it being me absorbing that, and where it becomes heavy and actually a block and barrier for myself. Because I think that happens a lot, especially in the line of work I do, where there's a heaviness in the type of work I do, where I'm dealing day to day with very difficult, situations where I'm involved in people's lives in very intimate ways, and it can be a lot to take on, like other people's emotions and energy on a daily basis.
We're everything that we've been doing in Buddhism 101 has been really, intellectualizing, these fundamental ideas and vocabulary and stuff like that. The next step is really engaging in the practices, and through these, prayers that we recite and so on, and they really show us the way in which we can purify and we can activate, actualize, and so on, these pure qualities and so on. So there's this one particular prayer that I'm going to recite to you right now. It's just 4 lines, but it goes right to the heart of what you were just saying, and it takes it to the next level. Okay, so it's not complicated, but just listen for a second. This is called the method of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind. Now I lack the ability to bring happiness to these migrators, all the people that we're talking about, the migrators who are in this crazy world. Therefore, I engage my mind diligently to attain the supreme ultimate state, the Buddha mind, as best as we can, and bring these mother beings to complete happiness. So I'm going to change my mind in order to help them change their mind. Bodhicitta is the unity of emptiness and compassion. So we've been talking about emptiness. Nothing has its own true nature. So, and compassion, of being able to bring loving kindness to beings. Bodhicitta, the unity of emptiness and compassion, I make effort to practice the ultimate Dharma, beyond conceptual thought. That's the operative phrase, beyond conceptual thought. As long as we're always trying to conceptualize, we're defeating our purpose of freedom. We need to simplify, release.
Thank you, Lance.
So I hope that helps. Tom?
Grants. That's kind of like the cartoon strip I looked at, where there's a man and a dog sitting on a bench, looking at the woods, and above the head of the man, little bubbles of his finances, his job, his family, his kids, his students. And above the dog, there's only one thing: the trees.
A place to pee. That's right. All right. Well, I think we've talked this around. I'd be more than glad to talk more if people have questions or more comments. But I'm willing to let this go tonight, and I think we need to talk about some basics. So maybe next week we'll go through the first three chapters of this book, Learning Buddhism, and just to bring up, some of the new people who have joined us. Thank you very much for joining us, and to kind of refresh our memories of the things that we've already, gotten to, we've gone through to get to this point and so on. So I think it would be important to shore that up a little bit. Okay. Okay, good.
Sounds good.
All right. All right. So unless anybody has anything else, we'll do the dedication prayers. So for the people who have just recently joined us, there's 3 parts to every one of our sessions, whether it's a teaching session, whether it's a study session that we're doing by ourselves, or it's a practice session that we're doing with a group or by ourselves. It's a contemplation or it's a meditation. There's 3 parts. First, we have to set our motivation. Why are we doing this? What's our intention? So we did that when we recited our opening prayers, and we're doing this for the enlightenment of other beings. That we are taking this time, we are devoting this time to learning things to be able to help other beings. So that's the primary motivation. Then we do the body of what our practice is, what our teaching is, what this dialogue has been about tonight, and so on. And then at the end, now we're changed. We are changed people now than we were 2 hours ago. We've heard some new things. We've thought some new thoughts. We may not totally understand what they are, but nevertheless, we recognize that there's something happening and there's something changing within our own minds and our own lives and so on. And whatever merit there is in that change, whatever wisdom there is in that change, whatever skillful means, whatever compassion there is to help other beings over their suffering, we dedicate that to the enlightenment of other beings. So this way, we're not holding on to selfishness. We're not saying, oh, I'm a better person because I just spent, 2 hours talking about this stuff and this makes me a better person. No, we're just letting that flow right through us, and we're turning that around and offering that to all beings. So these are the 3 things that we do. So first was the opening, the prayers, the motivation, then the practice. Now we're doing the dedication part. So in these prayers, we're going to dedicate the merit. So we're going to pay homage to our teachers, to our lineage masters, to those who came before us, centuries ago, as well as today. So we do that, and then we think of all beings. So I'm going to recite this prayer. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharmalur Gampopa, and Pagmadrupa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. So those 8 great beings that I just mentioned were the founders of this lineage over 1,000 years ago. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all merit for all sentient beings. So 2 of our great teachers, Manjushri and Samantabhadra, are leading the way, and we're following in their footsteps. By the blessing of the Buddha, who attained the 3 kayas, the three bodies of the Buddha, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, the Dharma, the unchanging Dharma, the wisdom, the true nature, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, the community of people that we all share with, may the merit I share bear fruit. So may the teachings that we share, the conversation that we have bear fruit. May we all be transformed in that way. And then by the virtues collected in the 3 times, the past, present, and future, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikompa Ratnashri, who is the founder of this lineage 800 years ago, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, the phenomenal nature, the reality of all this interdependent phenomenal nature, this relative nature, but also with the point of view of the absolute. Continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. So we say Om, the body, the speech, and the mind. Om, Ah, Hum, the body, speech, and mind. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. So thank you all very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.